All right, so hey everyone listening in at Regent Business School, welcome to another deep dive. Right now, being at Regent Business School, you're probably thinking a lot about starting your own businesses.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's exactly what we're going to deep dive into today. All the super important basics you need to know to really make a business work.
It's a great time to explore that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And to do that, we've gathered a ton of material on everything like how to get those business ideas flowing, how to be more creative, you know, figuring out if an idea is even doable, coming up with a strategy, marketing, finances, and of course, the good old business plan,
A whole 9 yards.
pretty much.
Uh,
So yeah, think of this as a real practical guide, Regent Business School style, to help you get a head start in the business world.
exactly. We'll be going through all of those resources and putting together the key takeaways for you guys.
Sounds good. So let's jump right in, shall we? First things first, where do you even begin with a business? Well, it all starts with an idea, right? And we've seen from the material we've gathered that there are kind of two main paths you can take when it comes to coming up with that initial idea.
Right.
The first one, and maybe the one that makes the most sense to a lot of people, is the customer-centric approach. Basically, it's all about finding problems that people or even entire markets are facing and then figuring out how to solve them.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here is that a lot of big successful companies actually started because someone realized that customers were unhappy with something.
Like what?
Like take Spanx, for example. Sarah Blakely, the founder, didn't just invent some whole new product out of nowhere. She started Spanx because she, personally experienced how annoying it was to deal with panty lines and uncomfortable shapewear.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And a lot of women felt the same way, right? And her success wasn't just about figuring out the problem itself, but really getting how her customers felt, emotionally, not just what they needed practically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Spanx also did a lot of creative marketing to connect with women. Basically, the big takeaway is listening to your customers' problems and really understanding them is super important for coming up with ideas that people actually want.
Totally. It's like that classic saying, find a need and fill it.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the customer-centric way.
Yeah.
But there's another approach too.
Right. The second one is called the idea-first approach.
What's that all about?
So instead of starting with the customer's problem, it's about coming up with something really innovative first and then showing people why they need it.
So kind of like convincing them it's a must-have.
Exactly. And a good example of this is Tesla with Elon Musk.
Yeah, I can see that.
If you think about it from a bigger strategic view, this idea-first approach often comes from a strong vision to change entire industries or even create brand new ones.
That's pretty ambitious.
It is. So when Tesla came onto the scene, electric cars weren't that popular. They were seen as kind of niche.
Yeah, not really mainstream.
Right. But Musk's whole plan wasn't to just make small improvements to existing electric cars. He wanted to create a super high-performance electric sports car.
Wow, aim high right.
Totally. And by doing that, he totally changed how people thought about electric cars.
Okay, so with the idea first way, it's more about leading the market in a new direction instead of just reacting to what customers already want.
Exactly. And it can be riskier, but if it works, it can be huge.
Makes sense. So is it like one approach is better than the other?
Well, what we've seen is that a lot of really successful companies actually use a mix of both.
Oh, it's like a hybrid approach.
Yeah, a good example of this is Apple, especially under Steve Jobs.
Apple. They always seem to be ahead of the curve.
Right. They came up with some really groundbreaking products, but they also had this amazing understanding of what users wanted and needed even before they knew it themselves.
So how does an aspiring entrepreneur, like someone at Regent Business School, decide which approach is right for them?
That's a great question. So, based on what we've learned, if you're tackling a really clear and common problem in a market that already exists, and if you want to test your idea quickly and minimize the risk, then the customer-centric way might be best.
Makes sense, kind of playing it a bit safer.
Exactly. But if you have an idea that's really new, like a brand new technology or something that creates a whole new market, and you have the resources to educate people about it, then the idea first way could be the way to go.
So one's more about solving a problem and the other's about bringing something totally new to the table.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool. So no matter which path you choose, there are some universal tips for success.
Right? Absolutely.
Like
Right.
that.
Well, no matter what, it's super important to really, really know your target market. And you got to be flexible and adaptable because things change so fast in the business world.
Roll with the punches.
And never stop learning. The market is always changing and there are always new things to learn. And of course, the most important thing is to create something that actually benefits your customers.
So it's not just about making money. It's about actually providing value.
Right. Whether you start with a customer problem or a groundbreaking idea, you got to make sure you're giving people something worthwhile.
Got it. So after the initial idea, what's the next big step?
Creativity. It's not just something you're born with, it's a skill you can actually practice and get better at.
Really? I always thought some people were just more creative than others.
Well, there are definitely different levels of natural creativity, but the great thing is there are all sorts of methods you can use to boost your creative thinking.
Oh, that's interesting. Like what?
Okay, so there's mind mapping, which is like visual brainstorming. You start with a central idea and then branch out with all these connected thoughts, like creating a web.
Ah, so it helps you see the big picture and how different ideas relate to each other.
Exactly. Say you're trying to come up with a sustainable travel bag. You could branch out into things like eco-friendly materials, what travelers actually need in a bag, cool ways to make it, and even how to market it.
That's pretty cool. It's like a map for your ideas.
Right. Then there's this other technique called lateral thinking, which is all about challenging assumptions and finding solutions that you wouldn't normally think of.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so imagine you need to cross a river, but there's no boat or bridge.
Swim.
Well, yeah, you could swim, but lateral thinking would push you to think beyond the obvious. Like, what if you could freeze the river or use something in the environment to help you cross?
Ah, so thinking outside the box.
Exactly. And there are specific techniques to help you do this, like questioning everything you think you know about a problem and looking at it from different angles.
Makes sense. So you're kind of forcing yourself to be more creative.
Pretty much. And then there's design thinking, which is all about putting the user at the center of everything.
Ah, so it's kind of like the customer-centric approach, but for the design process.
Yeah, you could say that. So there are these steps you go through, like really trying to understand the user's needs and experiences, defining the problem super clearly, brainstorming all sorts of solutions, making prototypes, and testing them out with actual users.
So it's a very hands-on and iterative process, constantly getting feedback from the people you're designing for.
Exactly. And because you're so focused on the user, you're more likely to come up with a solution that they'll actually love and use.
Got it. Are there any other cool techniques?
Definitely. There's something called the scamper method, which is basically a structured way to revamp existing products, services, or processes.
Sounds interesting. How does it work?
So scamper stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, magnify, put to another use, eliminate, and reverse rearrange.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
I know, right? But it's actually pretty simple. You basically take those actions and apply them to an existing idea. Like, imagine you're trying to reinvent the bicycle.
Okay, I'm picturing a bicycle right now.
So using scamper, you might ask, what can I substitute for the wheels? Or can I combine the bike with something else? Or how can I adapt it for a different use?
Oh, I see. So it's like a checklist to spark new ideas.
Exactly. It helps you systematically explore all sorts of possibilities that you might not have thought of otherwise.
So with all these different techniques, it sounds like being creative isn't about waiting for inspiration to strike, but more about actively using these tools to generate ideas.
Absolutely. The best creative thinkers are the ones who know how to use different techniques depending on the situation.
Cool. So you've got your creative juices flowing. You've come up with some awesome ideas. What's the next hurdle?
Well, now you got to figure out which of those ideas can actually turn into real business opportunities.
Okay, so it's not enough to have a great idea. It needs to be viable. Right.
Right. And that's where a mix of strategic thinking, market awareness, and, well, that good old entrepreneurial instinct comes in.
You have a nose for it.
Yeah, exactly. And there are some really helpful frameworks you can use to see if your idea has legs.
What kind of frameworks?
Well, remember the problem-solving approach we talked about earlier?
The one about finding a need and filling it.
Yep, that's one way to uncover opportunities. Think about Airbnb. Those guys saw that travelers were fed up with pricey and impersonal hotels.
Especially during busy travel time.
Exactly. So they realized, hey, what if people could just rent out rooms in their own homes? And bam, a whole new business model was born.
So it's about looking for those annoyances, inefficiencies, or things that are just missing in the market. Those are your potential gold mines.
Absolutely. And then there's another path, which is all about taking advantage of new technologies to create something completely different.
Like using tech to solve a problem or even create a whole new industry.
Exactly. A classic example is Uber. They used smartphones and GPS to totally shake up the way we think about transportation.
Yeah, Uber's everywhere now.
Right. But they didn't just make taxis a bit more convenient, they revolutionized the whole experience of getting around.
So technology can be a game changer.
Huge game changer. And then there's market trend analysis, which is all about keeping your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the world, like, what industries are booming, how people's demographics are shifting, what's going on with the economy, and most importantly, what customers are into these days.
So you got to be a bit of a trend spotter.
You could say that. And of course, there's the good old SWOT analysis.
Ah, yeah. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
You got it. That's a classic way to look at any business idea. It helps you figure out your internal strengths and weaknesses and what kind of external factors could help or hurt your business.
So it's a way to assess your idea from all angles.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, it can be applied to a whole company, a specific project, or even just a simple idea.
Handy. So with all these different frameworks, it seems like finding the right opportunity is less about luck and more about being proactive, curious, and organized in your approach.
Definitely. Successful entrepreneurs are always on the lookout for opportunities. They use these tools to not only recognize potentially successful ideas, but also to really scrutinize them and see if they're worth pursuing.
So once you've got a potential opportunity, how do you know if it's actually going to work?
That's where feasibility studies come in. They're all about testing the viability of your business idea, like really digging deep.
So it's not just about whether there's a market for your idea, but if you can actually make it happen, right?
Exactly. It's about going from that initial exciting idea to the nitty-gritty of making it a reality, and it involves looking at a whole bunch of different things.
Like what?
Okay, so first, market potential. It's not enough to just know that people might want your product. You got to understand how big the market is, if it's growing, who your competition is, and who your ideal customer is, like really deeply.
So you're figuring out if there are enough people out there who would actually buy what you're selling.
Exactly. Then there's technological feasibility, which is all about making sure you have the tech you need to make your idea work, if it's even possible with current technology, if you can get access to that technology, and if you can keep up as technology changes.
So if you're creating a new app, can you actually build it with the tech that's available right now? And will it still be relevant in a few years?
Exactly. And then there's operational feasibility, which is about the day-to-day stuff, like how are you going to run your business? What kind of team do you need? What are your processes going to be? Can you scale up your operations if needed?
So it's like the behind-the-scenes stuff that makes everything run smoothly.
Yeah, like the engine of your business.
Yeah, and of course you can't forget about the money, right?
Definitely not. That's where financial projections come in. You got to figure out realistic forecasts for your revenue and expenses, figure out your break-even point, and calculate your return on investment so you know how much money you need to make to actually be profitable.
So it's about being realistic about the money coming in and the money going out.
Right, and making sure your idea can actually make money.
Makes sense. And what about all the legal stuff?
Ah, that's a big one. You got to make sure you're following all the laws and regulations, getting the licenses you need, and navigating any legal hurdles that might pop up.
It's like the fine print of starting a business.
Yeah, but it's super important. You don't want to get caught out later on.
Good point. So it's not just about having a great idea, it's about making sure it's legally sound too.
Exactly. And another crucial part of feasibility studies is assessing risks and figuring out how to deal with them.
So like what could go wrong and how do you prevent it?
Exactly. It's not about eliminating every single risk because, well, that's impossible.
You can't predict everything.
Right, but you can try to identify potential problems, figure out how bad they could be, and come up with plans to handle them if they do happen.
So it's like having a backup plan or even several backup plans.
Exactly. It's about being prepared.
Got it. So are there any specific tools that can help with this whole feasibility analysis process?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's something called PESTLE analysis, which stands for political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal.
Wow, another acronym.
I know, right? But basically, it helps you look at all those big picture external factors that can influence your business.
So like if there's a change in government policy or a new trend emerging, you can see how it might impact your idea.
Exactly. And then there's Porter's 5 forces, which is all about understanding the competitive dynamics of your industry.
Like how many rivals are out there, how easy is it for new companies to enter the market, stuff like that.
Yep, all those factors that can affect how competitive your industry is and how profitable you can be.
So all these tools are basically giving you a more comprehensive view of your idea and its potential for success.
Exactly. A good feasibility study isn't about killing your dreams, it's about helping you make smart decisions.
Yeah, it's like getting a reality check before you invest too much time in something that might not work.
Exactly. It helps you refine your vision, make it stronger, and increase your chances of actually achieving your goals.
Got it. So you've determined your idea is feasible, you're feeling confident. What's next?
Time to figure out how you're actually going to run this thing, like the day-to-day operations.
Ah, the nitty-gritty detail.
Exactly. And that's where the operational plan comes in. It's basically the blueprint for how your business will function on a daily basis to achieve those big goals you've set.
So it's like a detailed roadmap for making your vision a reality.
Exactly. It covers everything from the actual steps involved in making your product or delivering your service, including the equipment you need, how you'll control quality, and how your workflow will be structured.
So it's like a recipe for your business.
In a way, yeah. And it also includes your human resource strategy, which is all about figuring out how many people you need to hire, how you'll recruit and train them, and everything related to managing your team.
So who are you going to hire and how are you going to make sure they're doing a great job?
Exactly. And then there's location and facility planning, which is obviously super important if you need a physical space like a shop or a factory. But it's also relevant even if your business is online, like what kind of online infrastructure do you need?
So even if you're not a brick and mortar store, you still need to think about the space your business occupies online.
Right. And then there's supply chain management, which is all about how you'll get the materials you need to make your product or deliver your service, how you'll manage inventory, and how you'll handle all the logistics of getting your product to your customers.
So it's like the whole journey of your product from raw materials to the customer's hands.
Exactly. And of course, throughout all of this, you got to make sure you're still following all those legal and regulatory rules we talked about before.
Right, staying on the right side of the law.
Absolutely. The key takeaway here is that your operational plan has to be detailed enough to guide everyone on a daily basis, but also flexible enough to adapt as things change because, well, the business world is constantly evolving.
So it's like a living document that needs to be regularly reviewed and updated.
Exactly. And when it comes to choosing your location, there are a ton of factors to consider. It's way more than just finding a space that's big enough.
Yeah. What else is there to think about?
Well, think about accessibility for both customers and employees. Can people easily get to your location? Is there enough parking? Is public transportation convenient? Is it accessible for people with disabilities?
Right, those are all super important considerations.
And then think about the other businesses around you. Are they competitors? Or are they complementary businesses that could actually help you attract more customers?
Ah, so being near a business that sells something related to your product could actually be a good thing.
Exactly. And then there's traffic flow, like how many people walk by your location, how much car traffic is there.
So you're thinking about visibility and how easy it is for people to notice your business.
Right. And then there are more personal factors to consider, like how long will it take you to commute to this location? Are there any restrictions from the landlord?
So it's not just about the business, it's about how the location fits into your own life too.
Exactly. And then there are all the financial aspects, like how much is the rent? What are the utilities like?
So making sure it's actually affordable.
Definitely. And then there are more subtle things to consider, like the appearance of the location, the history of businesses that have been there before, and even whether the location fits with your target customer's profile.
So like a trendy clothing store probably wouldn't do so well in a rundown industrial area.
Right. And then you have to think about the practicalities, like are there enough electrical outlets? Is there good lighting? Is it safe and secure?
So the functionality of the space is just as important as the location itself.
Absolutely. And don't forget about zoning regulations. You got to make sure you're allowed to operate your business in that particular location.
Oh yeah, all the legal stuff.
And finally, think about how close you are to your suppliers. If you're constantly getting deliveries, being close to your suppliers can save you a lot of time and money.
So there are a ton of things to think about when choosing your business location. It's a really important decision.
It really is. A good location can be a huge advantage for your business.
Makes sense. Okay, so you've got your operations figured out. Now you need to get the word out about your awesome business, right? That's where marketing comes in.
You got it. Marketing is all about bridging that gap between your brilliant ideas and the people who might actually buy your product or use your service. And it all starts with really understanding your target market.
Okay, so it's more than just making flashy ads or posting on social media. It's about really knowing your audience.
Definitely. You got to go beyond just knowing their age, gender, and location. You got to understand their values, their lifestyles, their interests, even their psychological makeup.
So like what makes them tick?
Exactly. What motivates them to buy things? What are their pain points? What are their aspirations?
And how do you gather all this information?
Well, there are a ton of ways. Surveys, focus groups, analyzing social media trends, market research reports, and just paying attention to what people are saying and doing.
So you're like a detective trying to uncover the secrets of your target market.
In a way, yeah. And once you have a good understanding of your audience, you can start segmenting them into smaller groups with similar characteristics, which allows you to tailor your marketing messages for maximum impact.
So instead of just blasting out a generic message to everyone, you can create specific messages that resonate with different segments of your audience.
Exactly. And to really bring those segments to life, you can create detailed customer personas, which are basically fictional representations of your ideal customers.
So like giving them names, backstories, even photos.
Yep, the whole shebang. It helps you visualize who you're talking to and makes it easier to create marketing messages that connect with them on an emotional level.
Makes sense. So you figured out your target market, now what?
Now you need to figure out your positioning strategy, which is basically how you want your business to be perceived in the minds of your customers. What makes you different and better than the competition?
So like your unique selling proposition, what sets you apart from the crowd?
Exactly. And once you have a clear positioning, you can start thinking about the tangible elements of your marketing mix, which is basically all the tools you'll use to reach your customers.
Yeah, what kind of tools?
Well, first, there's your product strategy, which is all about making sure your product or service actually meets the needs and desires of your target market.
So does your product actually solve their problem or fulfill their need?
Right. And then there's your pricing strategy, which is about finding the sweet spot between making a profit and making your product attractive to customers.
So pricing it too high might scare people away, but pricing it too low might make them think it's low quality.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act.
But what about promotion?
That's all about how you communicate with your customers. Everything from advertising and public relations to content marketing and social media.
So it's all the different ways you get the word out about your business.
Exactly. And these days, digital marketing is a huge part of promotion.
Yeah, everyone's online now.
Right. You got to be on top of things like search engine optimization so people can find you on Google, social media marketing, creating engaging content, and email marketing to keep in touch with your customers.
Marketing is a lot more complex than it used to be.
It definitely is. But it's also more exciting. There are so many ways to reach your customers now.
And what about the competition?
Oh, you definitely can't forget about the competition. It's super important to analyze what your competitors are doing well and where they're falling short.
So like spying on them.
Well, not exactly spying, but definitely keeping an eye on them. You got to figure out their pricing, the quality of their products, their customer service, their marketing strategies, everything.
So you can learn from their successes and avoid their mistakes.
Exactly. And by understanding your competition, you can find ways to differentiate yourself and offer something truly unique and valuable to your customers.
So marketing is all about understanding your customers, your competition, and how to effectively communicate your value to the world.
Pretty much. It's about building relationships with your customers and creating a brand that people love and trust.
Got it. Okay, so we've talked about the operational side of things and the marketing side of things, but what about the money? Every business needs a solid financial plan, right?
Absolutely. The financial plan is all about outlining your projections and strategies related to revenue, expenses, break-even points, funding, and all the underlying assumptions that drive your financial decisions.
So it's like a financial roadmap for your business.
Exactly. It's super important to be realistic in your financial planning, and that starts with good market research.
So you need to base your revenue projections on solid data, not just wishful thinking.
Exactly. You got to have a clear understanding of how much people are willing to pay for your product or service and how much you can realistically sell.
And what about expenses?
Well, you need to create a detailed expense budget listing all your fixed costs, which are the expenses that stay the same no matter how much you sell, like rent, salaries, insurance, and so on.
So the basic costs of keeping your business running.
Exactly. And then you have your variable costs, which are the expenses that change depending on how much you produce or sell, like raw materials, packaging, shipping, and so on.
So the more you sell, the higher your variable costs will be.
Right. And by carefully tracking and categorizing your expenses, you can get a clear picture of where your money is going and identify potential areas for cost optimization.
So finding ways to save money without sacrificing quality.
Exactly. Now, another essential part of financial planning is break-even analysis, which helps you determine the point at which your total revenue equals your total costs.
So the point where you're no longer losing money and start making a profit.
Exactly. You need to calculate how many units you need to sell to cover all your expenses, and that gives you your break-even point in units.
And convert that into a break-even point in currency, which is the amount of revenue you need to generate.
Right. And our materials actually have a great example of this using a business that sells desks.
You can see how many desks they need to sell to cover their costs and start making a profit.
Exactly. And understanding your break-even point is crucial for setting realistic sales targets and making sure your pricing is aligned with your costs.
So it's like a financial safety net. You need to hit that break-even point to stay in business.
Absolutely. Now, another key aspect of financial planning is funding.
So figuring out where you're going to get the money to start and grow your business.
Exactly. And there are a lot of different options like equity financing, where you sell shares of your company to investors, or debt financing, where you take out loans.
So you're either giving up a portion of ownership in exchange for cash or taking on debt that you need to repay with interest.
Right. And your financial plan needs to clearly outline how much funding you need, where you're planning to get it from, how you'll use the funds, and what your projected return on investment will be.
So you're basically making a case to potential investors or lenders, showing them why your business is a good investment.
Exactly. And finally, it's crucial to be transparent about all the assumptions that underpin your financial projections.
So like any guesses or estimates you've made about future market conditions or costs?
Right. You need to clearly state these assumptions so that anyone looking at your financial plan can understand how you arrived at your projections.
So it's all about being honest and upfront about the potential risks and uncertainties.
Exactly. A good financial plan is built on a foundation of solid data, realistic assumptions, and clear communication.
Makes sense. So we've talked about the day-to-day operations, the marketing strategy, and the financial plan. But what about the bigger picture, the long-term vision for your business?
That's where the strategic plan comes in. It's all about defining where you want to be in the future and how you're going to get there.
So it's like setting the direction for your business and creating a roadmap for success.
Exactly. And a good strategic plan usually starts with a mission statement, which is a short and sweet summary of your company's purpose, what you do, and why you do it.
So like your core values and beliefs.
Right. And a good mission statement should be concise and easy to remember, ideally under 15 words.
So like a guiding principle that everyone in the company can rally behind.
Exactly. And then you have your vision statement, which is a bit broader and more aspirational. It paints a picture of where you want your company to be in the future.
So like your ultimate goal, the big dream you're working towards.
Exactly. And the SWOT analysis we talked about earlier, the one with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, is also super helpful for strategic planning.
So you're using it again, but this time to analyze your company as a whole and its position in the market.
Right. You're looking at your internal strengths, like a strong brand reputation or a talented team, and your weaknesses, like a lack of funding or a limited product line.
And then you're looking at external factors like emerging markets or new technologies. That could be opportunities for growth and threats like increased competition or economic downturns that could pose challenges.
Exactly. And our materials actually have some great examples of what kinds of factors might fall into each of those categories.
It's a great way to get a 360-degree view of your business and its environment.
Definitely. And when you're doing a SWOT analysis for strategic planning, it's important to be realistic, specific, and to compare your strengths and weaknesses to your competitors.
So not just saying we have a great product, but our product is superior to our competitors' products in these specific ways.
Exactly. And finally, your strategic plan needs to include specific goals and objectives that will help you achieve your vision.
So like milestones you need to hit along the way.
Right. These goals should be long-term and ambitious, while your objectives should be more specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Those are your SMART objectives.
Ah, I've heard of SMART objectives.
So you might have a long-term goal of becoming the market leader in your industry, and then you'd break that down into smaller, more manageable objectives with specific deadlines and metrics for tracking progress.
So it's like a step-by-step plan for achieving your big vision.
Exactly. A good strategic plan provides clarity, direction, and a framework for making informed decisions that will drive your business forward.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about something that's crucial for many entrepreneurs, especially when they're trying to get funding or partnerships, the pitch deck.
Ah, the pitch deck, the entrepreneur's best friend and worst nightmare.
Why nightmare?
Well, it can be nerve-wracking trying to condense your entire business idea into a short, persuasive presentation.
But it's essential, right?
Absolutely. It's often your first impression with potential investors, so it's got to be. It's not just sharing your idea. It's about making a first impression
Right.
that really
It's
sticks.
got to resonate.
Exactly. Investors, for example, I mean, they're constantly assessing risk and potential.
Yeah.
So being clear and having a compelling vision right out of the gate is super important.
Absolutely. It's not enough to just have this brilliant idea locked away in your head,
Yeah.
right? You need to actually be able to explain it to other people in a way that captures their attention, that shows them the value.
Right.
It's like translating your own internal vision into an opportunity, an external opportunity that other people can see and get excited about.
It's really cool. One of the sources had this great quote: "The best way to predict the future is to create it."
I love that.
It really captures that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
It's not about just waiting for stuff to happen. It's about going out and shaping the landscape.
It's about taking control.
Exactly.
And that's such an empowering idea for anybody listening. It's like,
Yeah.
you're not just a spectator anymore. You're a creator,
Yeah.
right? You have the power to influence the outcome and shape the future of your idea.
Absolutely. And another thing I think is important to remember is that you don't have to do this alone.
Oh, yeah, definitely not.
There are resources out there, like the Entrepreneurs Bootcamp, for example, that are specifically designed to guide you through this process, step by step.
Which can be really valuable because starting a business can be pretty complex
Yeah.
and there's so much information out there, right? But having that support, having that expertise available can really give you the structure that you need and help you avoid those common pitfalls.
Yeah.
And keep you moving in the right direction. And, it's like one of the sources says, whether you're solving a problem in your community or launching the next big thing, this is your moment.
That's so true.
And I think that's such a great reminder that whatever idea you have right now, regardless of the scale,
Yeah.
it has potential, right?
Absolutely. Every idea has potential.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the bigger picture, the commitment involved in actually building a business.
Yeah.
There's this really interesting quote from one of our sources, and it goes like this: "Entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so that you can spend the rest of your life like most people can't."
It's powerful, right?
It really highlights the dedication and the hard work that it takes in those early stages, but it also points towards the potential rewards, the long-term rewards.
It's like the potential to completely change your life.
Exactly. And I think it just really emphasizes that building something meaningful, something that lasts, often demands, a lot of focus, a lot of sacrifice in those initial years.
It is a trade-off.
It is.
You're investing a lot upfront with the hope of a very different future down the line.
Exactly.
And it all comes back to that call to action, right? To take the lead.
Yeah, you have to take action.
It's about moving beyond just planning and analyzing and actually starting, taking that first concrete step.
Absolutely.
So just to recap, what have we talked about? We talked about how important it is to have that strong, that compelling initial pitch.
Yeah.
Right? We've talked about how you actually take an idea and make it a reality.
Right, that transition from the abstract to the concrete.
Exactly. And how empowering it is to think about creating the future that you want to see.
And don't forget that you don't have to do this alone. Look for support, find mentors, access resources.
And it's your moment right now. Interesting material and kind of pulling out the core insights on exactly that. Like, how do you actually take that first step?
Yeah. Yeah.
And our whole mission here is to give you like a really clear understanding of those first steps, but also like the mindset that it takes to transform an idea, just an idea,
Right.
into something real and viable.